Welcome to Corpse Club, the official podcast of DailyDead.com. I'm your host, Jonathan James, and today I have special guests, Bri Tippetts and Josh Ruben. We're going to be talking about Darla, coming soon, May 31st, from Invader Comics. It is a graphic novel I've had a chance to check out. It's really cool. I can't wait for our readers to check it out, and I'm very happy to have the two of you here to talk all about it.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
And so I always like to, kind of take things back to the early days. And before we even get to the comic book itself, and maybe we'll start, Bri, with you. Can you tell us a little bit about growing up and your experience with horror, whether it be movies or graphic novels? What are some of your earliest memories of the genre?
Oh man, just since I was little, probably one of my earliest memories was when I was like between the ages of like 3 to 5, like really little on Halloween. Me and my dad would watch the Universal monster movies every year, like as a marathon. And I think that's part of where my love for horror started. Comics came along a little bit after, but yeah, the Universal was where it started.
Universal monsters are great. That's where I started off too. My parents started me with that and old Vincent Price and all that good stuff.
Yeah, but those Goosebumps kind of got a little further, but it wasn't scary enough. And by the 5th grade, I wanted something even scarier. And my aunt told me about Stephen King. So by about then, I went into the more darker Stephen King kind of stuff.
Ooh, nice. Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, you had a similar path to what I had, as our listeners know. It was similar to me, where it was starting on Universal Monsters, getting really into Goosebumps, and being like, okay, I read all the Goosebumps books, and then Stephen King and Clive Barker from then in grade school. So that's really cool. And then Josh, how about you?
Let's see. I mean, my mom and dad, I grew up in the VHS horror aisle video store era. So we'd somehow walk into the video store and my mom would just let me get whatever movie I thought cover looked cool. So sometimes it would be Monkey Shines or even Dream Warriors, like Freddy movies. And then when she realized that was a mistake, it elevated to movies like Jaws, where the adults could enjoy it. But I would watch the really the hardcore stuff in my sister's room. My sister Rachel, it was always like, come check out, Friday the 13th Part 3 on whatever was playing on cable on a Sunday, which it was, for any child to just kind of channel surf and stumble upon. So it was a lot of Freddy, a lot of Jason, a lot of Jaws, and a lot of Stephen King movies like Silver Bullet and even Cat's Eye. It's
funny that you mentioned the VHS store, because people don't have that experience these days of trying to sneak that video past your parents and being like, look, the cover's nice. It's just Ghoulies.
That's right. That's truly what it was. Just like Goonies. Remember that? That was a kid's movie.
Yeah.
Gremlins, they're cuddly. That was a really, really smart marketing ploy too, because it's like, Gizmo's essentially on the cover. Maybe you have, a reptilian gremlin hand, and yet, you watch it and what do they morph into? It's great.
Yeah. Great stuff. And so, it's really cool. As I had mentioned, I had a chance to read Darla. And the reason why I had asked as well about your background is because it definitely seems like your background's kind of informed this cool original horror graphic novel. Josh, can you talk about, where this idea came from and why you decided to go the graphic novel route with it?
Well, it's sort of taboo to say, but when I started interacting with Brianna, who was sending me incredible fan art of some of my work, and eventually we got to exchanging addresses. She sent me incredible, stickers, fan art, and eventually her book Rictus, which is incredible. My gears started turning and thinking about, how we could collaborate together and work on a graphic novel. And so it's sort of like racking my brain as to what the story was going to be. And I thought, well, I've had this film sitting on my shelf for some time that was originally called Annie. And then I realized that's a musical. And then I eventually changed it to Darla Demon. And then with the graphic novel, just Darla, which is essentially the same story. It's definitely been whittled down quite a bit, simplified for graphic novel format. But the story essentially came to me, without sounding like woke horror dude, but it was definitely out of my fear about the 2016 election in part, and then just about really the core of isolation and just what isolation does to people, and just sort of thinking about, and this was more, this was certainly pre-pandemic, but sort of post-election, just what that isolation was doing, kind of bringing out the worst in people. If you're in a bubble or you're in a pod with only people who are, playing the evil channel, you're only going to think evil things, and that's essentially what this story is about. But it's definitely influenced by, the Stephen King influence is definitely, a bit Dead Zone, and it feels very kind of EC Comics in tone, which I think Brianna brought to it, but it definitely is inspired a bit by the spirit of like HBO's Tales from the Crypt. It's playful, but it's very dark and very wicked. But I feel like if it were an episode of Tales from the Crypt, you could have Jeffrey Tambor playing playing her in prosthetics, just like he did, in his episode with Demi Moore, or Ed Begley Jr., for example, or it would be, some great opportunity for some like Academy Award winning actress to do her 30-minute episode, like Tom Hanks would come in and do, or something like that. So it's very influenced by kind of an array of different things, but the core of it is just like, oof, the awful side effect of tunnel vision.
That's it's interesting how, even though this was kind of written pre-pandemic, how it's even maybe more important now, right? There are some people and some creators that are kind of tackling this isolation, or the kind of the last 3 years that a lot of people have been going through. But then there's also like a huge part of the entertainment industry when stories are being told that just kind of gloss over it. So it's interesting how that stuff works. Bri, would you, mind kind of speaking to kind of your side of this and getting involved with it? It sounds pretty cool that, like I said, you kind of started from like creating fan art to now working on this full, graphic novel. So it sounds pretty exciting.
Yeah, I was really excited when Josh reached out and wanted to collaborate together. So it was definitely an easy yes. Even before I'd like received the script and everything. And then he kind of passed along the script and like some like decks, like director decks of like images of like what visuals inspired him for the visuals of it. And I kind of just took it from there and helped kind of create his world, but also with like little hints of my own aesthetic for art, and some of my inspirations as well. So.
And I always find the graphic novel or the comic book process interesting, because it really is such a partnership. And of course, for some people who may not have been involved on the creative side of it, you may not realize that it's just that it starts, similar to a movie. It starts with, pages on the script, but then working with the artist, things may change. You may come up with different ideas, may inform how the panels are structured versus what the writer may have in mind. Bri, can you talk a little bit about this creative process and kind of maybe areas where you were able to change or kind of enhance or make a difference as opposed to what was on the paper, what the original plan was?
Well, so we started with character design, and I kind of made sure like we had like a similar cohesive idea on that. And as soon as that was okay, I kind of started filling out the pages and sending them as I went, just in case we wanted any big changes during the beginning to happen. And then after that, we kind of like went through the whole thing, figured out, I kind of went a little dialogue heavy because I really love Josh's work and I didn't want to like take any writing away. So that was a learning process for me. But we ended up taking away some of that and adding in just more art, more visuals, just more stuff to really get people into the aesthetic side of the book.
And then from your side, Josh, how was it to kind of, have that original idea and see what changes as it starts coming to life on the page?
I mean, it was incredible. I've rarely had the opportunity to see stuff I've written come to life via another artist. I really only had that with Scare Me, because my second film, Werewolves Within, was written by Mishna Wolf, and I got to just bring a flavor to it in a very different way. With this, it was like really working with any department head, if I'm using, filmmaking language, you want your artist, in this case, just like you want your stunt person, just like you want your production designer to have skin in the game. And a comic is certainly no exception. In fact, it's a 50-50 game, if not 60-40 in my artist's favor. To sort of say, hey, like, Bri, you know this medium more than I do, you take it. So it was really thrilling to see Brianna's interpretation, with very little notes from me, honestly, just in characters. I just would kind of say, hey, run with it. I had references from, movie actors and such, everyone from Martin Sheen and The Dead Zone to, the lady in Shutter Island who shushed. So just to see her kind of like morph all those things together and through the lens of her work was really exciting. The real learning lesson, I think, for both of us came, Bri touched on it with the dialogue, was then handing the rough draft of the book to Invader and having those publishers like, Mike Perkins and Kevin Miller sort of look at that and go, great, it's riddled with text. You now need to take a good chunk of this text out. It's way too wordy, and have the imagery do a lot more of the work. And that was a really, really big learning lesson, as was the kind of what we call chapter pages. It's almost like at the end of each panel, at the end of each page on the, on the right side, that's a cliffhanger. You turn the page and you have a new sort of an image to refresh your experience of the book. So that combination was a real eye opener for sure.
And Bri, can you talk about you're kind of doing, well, you're definitely doing, you're doing the artwork, you're doing the lettering, you're kind of, so like I guess full stack would be the word. As for some of our listeners who aren't as familiar with it, you may have individual artists who are penciling, who are inking, who are coloring, who are handling the letters. You're doing all of this. Do you prefer that style of work so that you're kind of, involved in that whole process? And how long did this take you to put together the whole graphic novel?
It's just the way I've always kind of done the process. For a while, I was trying to get into, like, I had a teacher in college who inked comics professionally. I learned how to ink, and I kind of tried going that route and just kept hearing no, no, no. So I kind of made my own stuff and applied for that with Darla too. But yeah, I just have always kind of, I didn't want to wait for someone to give me permission, and I'm just always kind of, okay, I'll pencil, ink, do the coloring, everything, and I do it all traditional. None of it's digital.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, I had no idea, which makes it even a more difficult process because you don't have those digital tools to kind of assist, but also must be maybe even a little more fulfilling as well, right? To have the physical, what do you call it, artwork in front of you.
Yeah, it's really fun with the edits too, because it's almost like doing a puzzle, like how to fix it without, it's like old school prosthetics. You have to figure out how to make it work without people knowing how you made it work,
Yeah, that kind of breaks my digital brain because I'm not an artist. I can't draw to save my life, and I'm in awe of people who can. And but to imagine kind of making the edits then when it came to notes on the script and whatnot. Yeah, that must have been, like I said, kind of an extra layer of challenge, but it all came together really well.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Can you talk, Josh, can you talk about the Kickstarter? Because I think that was kind of a great way to not only bring awareness, but kind of engage with fans and introduce it and give them some good offerings as well. I know a lot of folks are going the Kickstarter, especially when it comes to comic books. And I wanted to hear about your experience and yours as well.
Yeah, it's the norm for sure. I was very I wouldn't say resistant. I was very anxious because I didn't want to be perceived as like, oh, what's Mr. Movies over here asking for $8,500 for, like, in these unprecedented times. And Mike at Invader, Mike and Kevin both had to remind me, it's like, you're not asking people for anything. You're offering pre-orders with perks. That's how you have to look at it. So it's like, depending on the tier that you're purchasing or you're paying into, you'll get, incredible original fan art, you'll get alt cover, et cetera, metal book plate. So I had to kind of reframe my thinking and use that to catapult or motivate my signal boosting the campaign itself. it is a norm in indie publishing. Publishing is expensive. We want to obviously pay Brianna. I paid Brianna out of pocket, certainly for the first leg of it. So getting her properly compensated, especially after our major tweaks in the latter half, is super important. We have a PR person that was paid for. We're doing an incredible run of press right now, which is great, all leading up to the 31st. So I think what made it fun was having Invader say, make it personal. Talk about your love of comic books. You don't have to say, give me money, Darla, Darla, Darla. It's talk about how you love your Darkman comic collection. Talk about how you read, Venom Lethal Protector front to back 1,000 times, or, the graphic novelization of Batman Returns back in the early 90s, on every car ride, Batman year 1, year 2, full circle, et cetera, et cetera. Talk about all the Batmans, show pictures of your old comic collection. That's what made it fun. I was certainly resistant at first. I still can't believe that we rocketed past our goal. It was a really, really hefty goal. And that we exceeded it by, close to $2,000 still kind of blows my mind.
Yeah, it was really great. What was your experience, Bri, with this, and how do you feel hitting this goal and exceeding it?
Excited and thankful to everybody who backed it. It was really cool to just see the number of people who backed it, and we're excited about Darla. And it was my first time as well using Kickstarter, and it was cool to see what a tool it was. And like Josh said, we were offering something. I mean, people get like an interview with Josh if they want, or they can get like a personalized artwork and that kind of stuff. So it really was cool to kind of give back something really fun and interesting with it.
Yeah, it was great, and it's always nice because, of course, comics go digital as well, but it's nice to have physical edition, alternate copies. Like people, like collectors, really enjoy that, and so this was a great way to kind of get involved on the ground floor. I almost forgot to bring up one thing that I really loved. I loved a lot about this this story, but one thing I really loved about the graphic novel was the advertisements in between so the different sections. Josh, how did that work out? Was that something that you intended from the beginning?
Oh no, Brianna surprised me with those. I can't remember, Bri, if you were like, what do you think about, or what would you think about, kind of an old school Halloween mask or haunted phone or game ad. I think that was how it kind of began, and I was just obviously like, yes. What was extra exciting was then, again, Invader saying, great, keep going, not just with the ads, but with what we called spooky pages, like just a full page image of, toxic water blooming in the reservoir, or of a gravestone of a dog, or just something to kind of something eerie to reset your brain for, the next leg of the story. But I love those ads too. I think there were maybe even a few more, Bri. I can't remember. We keep talking about like the quote unquote compendium, like the real director's cut of this book, of which there are pages, to add even more that may have hit the editing room floor.
Yeah, I think most of them made it, but there might be a couple we ended up taking out to like make the number right. But yeah, we definitely went hard on the ads. It was fun.
Yeah, it was a great touch, and so I just wanted to say how much I like that.
Thank you.
Obviously, we don't want to spoil too much for our readers, who I encourage to pick up Darla on May 31st. But Bri, you want to give a little tease as to maybe a favorite panel or something that our readers can look forward to?
My favorite is honestly something we've already used a lot in the advertisements and like the stuff for the Kickstarter. But I love the section of pages where Darla's in this like surreal, dreamlike state and wanted like red clouds and it just to be really unknown and freaky and dreamlike. And I just had a lot of fun with those pages visually.
Nice. And Josh, how about you?
I love that. I love that sequence. I mean, I think anytime it gets weird and ethereal and feels kind of like almost Babadooky, like when things ramp to like Dark World, that really, really gets me. But also just especially the tweaked frames where Darla originally, there were some images where we would feel, say, Darla's husband in a frame, and Invader suggested, hey, why don't we take him out and just have a high headroom image of Darla sitting on the couch to really emphasize or drive home the theme of loneliness, isolation, and the dangers of that. Seeing her alone in any panel is really, really always gets me, because it is such a heartbreaking character. You know, I hate her so much, and I also love her so much and feel for her so much, but I also fucking hate her.
Before we wrap, I definitely want to make sure that we plug not only where our listeners and our readers can find you on social media and online, but any projects you have coming up. Bri, we'll start with you.
So I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Bri Tippetts Art. I also have like an Etsy and stuff if you want to check out Rictus, my other book. I'm currently just kind of plugging away at some ideas, but yeah, keeping things going.
Sounds good. And Josh, how about you?
I'm at Josh Ruben on Instagram and the hellscape of Twitter myself, that I hop back on to promote Darla. But most of the stuff that's going on with me, I throw on my website, josh'smindhouse.com. There's even a pre-order link if you go to the merch section, where you can hit the Darla image, and I just arbitrarily picked Westfield Comics because they have a good price. You can pre-order the comic right now.
That's great. Well, thank you very much to the both of you for taking the time to talk with me about this. As a reminder to our listeners, Darla will be available on May 31st from Invader Comics. You'll be able to find it at your favorite comic book shop. We'll include some links along with this episode as well. And I want to thank the both of you. It was really nice to speak to the both of you, to learn more about this creative process. It's really cool. And I guess, one thing I'll say too to my listeners to kind of pitch them on this is that obviously we have a lot of horror movie fans and horror TV show fans. But for those of you even who maybe you're like, I don't read a lot of comic books, or like I play video games, stuff like that, I would strongly encourage you to give horror graphic novels a try. Definitely Darla, but there are also others. It is a whole world for people to explore. There are decades of amazing horror comics from artists all over the world. So if you're like, well, there's nothing new, on TV, I strongly suggest looking for horror graphic novels like Darla. That's a wrap for this episode. Until next time, stay scary.